everyone, and welcome to the latest Economist Intelligence Unit Global Outlook video. My name is Agathe Demarais and I'm the Global Forecasting Director at EIU. I'm joined today by Emily Mansfield, our Principal Economist for Europe, based in London. Today, we're going to discuss the impact of war in Ukraine on European economies. And Emily, I'm going to turn to you for a first scene-setting question. Where are you starting to see strains emerging in European economies, and what type of indicators are you looking at?
So we're starting to get some of the high frequency indicators out now from March, and these show the initial impact of the Ukraine war. So for example, we've seen in the IFO survey that business expectations in Germany fell by the largest amount on record in March, more even than during the pandemic. We've also got truck toll mileage data out for Germany. This is kind of handy, useful proxy for industrial production. And this slumped at the start of March, but it's actually started to pick up a bit since then. And this tallies with reports that automotive firms have been able to source alternative components that they were buying from Ukraine. We've also been looking at real-time ship movement data to get a sense of trade volumes. And it looks like these dropped quite precipitously across most of Europe in March, partly because of the renewed lockdown measures in China, partly self-sanctioning behaviour by European firms that want to reduce their reliance on Russia, and partly, of course, the official EU sanctions on Russia, which have cut exports of things like high-tech components and imports of things like coal and fertiliser.
And there's been actually a lot of discussions about Europe experiencing an energy price crunch. How much is this fueling inflation in your view?
Well, a lot would be the short answer. Eurozone inflation hit 7.5% in March. And of course, this spike in consumer prices is really going to crimp consumer spending this year. Energy price rises are the main factor behind this, but we are starting to see core inflation picking up a little bit now too. And if we look at a breakdown by country, you can see the countries that are most dependent on Russian energy are, of course, the ones that are seeing the steepest price rises, so in particular countries in Eastern Europe. Governments across the regions have brought in some new measures to try and cushion households. We're seeing price caps, subsidies, tax cuts. These only have quite a marginal effect. And I think the clearest example of this is what's happened recently in France. The government has brought in a price cap for energy prices. Inflation is a lot lower than in the country's neighbours, but this wasn't enough to stop purchasing power and the rising cost of living from becoming core issues in the recent presidential campaign.
Well, you're mentioning France is a perfect transition to my final question. We've seen that President Emmanuel Macron has just been re-elected for a second term in France. What does that mean for the future of the European economic outlook?
Well, to start with, it means that markets and investors can expect a continued pro-business, pro-EU policy stance from France. And given the alternative that was on offer, this is in itself a relief. But two more concrete points that we can make. Firstly, we're expecting some movement now the election is over on the EU's sixth sanctions package on Russia. Macron is among those pushing for sanctions on Russian oil, making this more likely. It's going to be costly. It's going to be hard work. Alternatives are going to need to be sourced. But it will nonetheless be not as costly as the potential under discussion sanctions on gas, which, if they were to be decided, would represent the biggest risk to the European economy at present. And the second point is that with Macron pledging that his energy price cap will remain in place for as long as necessary, regardless of the fiscal cost, I think we can see France pushing for a slower than planned return to fiscal rules across the EU.
Thanks so much, Emily, for your insights. You can always find our latest analysis and white papers on our website, www.eiu.com. Thanks for watching us today and see you next month. Goodbye.